This didn't start out as an idea. It started with my face, a place I try to look only when necessary. Over the years, as I released tension in my body, something formed between my eyebrows, a very clear cross shape in my flesh. I didn't try to make it happen. It wasn't cosmetic. It was three-dimensional, like it had been carved into my flesh. I just noticed it one day, after a great deal of tension had been released. And then I saw Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, the one featured in the Da Vinci Code. The rose window there is different from many others. It has a very distinct cross pattern. And when I saw it, I stopped in that cognitive dissonance sort of way, because the shape in stone was almost exactly the same as the one that had formed in the flesh on my face. A slightly paler, slightly raised cross within a slightly depressed circle. Stone, bone, and flesh. And suddenly it wasn't just something that I had seen in my flesh. It wasn't just on me anymore. It was external. It was structural. It was architecture. That's when something clicked. A cathedral, or a church, is a three-dimensional representation of a skull. If you take the skull without the lower jaw, what's called the cranium, you have both the facial bones and the dome of the head as one unified structure. The front of the cathedral, the facade, is the face. The vaulted chamber above, the calvarium or dome, is the cranial vault. The face, the chambers within, the vaulted roof, and once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. And I remember wondering, why have I never seen this before? And then another phrase came to me, the Holy Land, and I paused. Land full of holes. Bone is porous. The skull is full of openings. The Cribriform plate alone has tiny perforations. It's land full of holes. The Holy Land. It was right here, not out there somewhere. Right in front of my face, or rather, within it. And that led to another question. If the skull is the Holy Land, what does it mean to enter it? So let's stand outside the cathedral for a moment. The word facade literally means face. It's the face of a building. The central doorway is often two doors separated by a column, the nostrils, separated by the septum. You walk through the doorway into the vestibule. We breathe through the nasal vestibule. On either side of the entrance are often additional doors, the eyes. Above the central doorway is a rose window, sometimes with a cross, through which light pours in. In the flesh on the face, it is an external representation of an open inner eye. Two bell towers rising on either side are the ears. And then there are the carvings, the stories etched in stone. Struggle, suffering, transformation. Cathedrals carry their stories on the outside, and so do we. Our faces hold the stories we've lived. Our expressions repeat. Tension settles into our bone and flesh. Our face, our facade, records what we've felt. It's all there if you look. And all that brings up another question. If this is the entrance to the Holy Land, why is it through the nose? Think about your experience when you enter a cathedral. First, there is the enormity of the space. We'll come back to that later. Then you may hear the organ. The sound fills the space. It vibrates through stone. In the body, our voice rises from the throat and resonates through the chambers in the skull. Bone amplifies sound. Stone amplifies sound. When there's tension, resonance changes. When there's space, the resonance changes. I've felt that myself. As tension released in my head, the way sound felt changed. I began to feel sound in my body, not just hear it. Then there's fragrance, incense and flowers. Smell goes straight to memory, straight to emotion. It bypasses the intellect. The olfactory nerves pass through tiny perforations in the cribriform plate, a thin sheet of bone at the roof of the nasal cavity. It's almost like the Clerestory windows in a cathedral. High up near the roof, there are openings that allow light to enter the space below. In the skull, there are tiny openings that allow scent to pass upward into awareness. And then you start to wonder, if all of this is mirrored, what happens when we go inside, when we breathe the breath of life? The nave is that long central passageway. The nasal passage is also a long central corridor, air moving through sacred space, breathing moving in and out. Further in, at the roof of the nasal cavity, between the eyes, sits something called the Ethmoidal Labyrinth, a honeycomb of small air cells, porous, delicate, full of tiny passageways, a passage for air, a passage for breath. And interestingly, many cathedrals have a labyrinth built into their floor, a path for walking inward. So you have to ask, is all of this a coincidence? Or were these structures once understood in a different way? As I continued releasing tension in my head, this area began to change. Pressure shifted. Space opened. It felt like something was opening in places I didn't even know could open. And at one point I realized that I could breathe into my head. Like you breathe into your chest or into your stomach, I could breathe into my head. Something I had never even considered possible before. Back to the cathedral. Then we look up into the dome, into the cranium, the vaulted chamber where sound echoes, where perception happens, where thoughts arise. And then a bigger question came. What is the most important part of a cathedral? It seems to be the altar, the most sacred space. It's where something is offered, where something changes, where something is altered. Even the word altar, is it where we alter something? So I wondered, where is that in the skull? Traditionally, an altar is made of stone. It often contains a hidden chamber, a sepulchre holding relics, a hollow space within something that appears solid, with a narrow entrance and a protected interior. And I discovered the skull has something very similar. It's called the sphenoid bone, and at its center is the sphenoid body, a rock-like structure, solid on the outside, but containing a hollow chamber inside. The sphenoid sinus, hidden, protected, difficult to access. And here's something else I came across that really caught my attention, because we're getting into the specifics here. In a traditional altar, the small opening to the inner chamber, the sepulchre, is often sealed or marked with something called a sigillum. Today we think of a sigillum as a seal, the wax on a letter, but originally it referred to a small figure, a statuette, something placed at the entrance, not necessarily to block it, but to signify that the space was sacred, that it belonged to something beyond the ordinary. And I'll share something a little unusual here. One of the ways I release tension in my body is to imagine a very small version of myself, like a tiny statuette, inside the area I'm working on. I didn't share this idea or this image in my book because it felt too awkward to do that. But here I am showing it to you. As I'm able to be there, to place my awareness in this place, the tension begins to release. It's not easy, and I haven't talked about it much because it's so strange. But then I came across something that caught my attention. A small pamphlet by Manly B. Hall. He was describing one of the stages of yogic development, and he said something along the lines of, the center of awareness can be moved so that it is located in any part of the body. And when I read that, I realized that was exactly what I had been doing. The ability to place awareness in a specific location. I've now come to believe that much of this is about awareness, about where we are aware from and where we can place awareness within. And perhaps the most sacred place isn't somewhere we visit externally, but somewhere we learn to access internally. When I started doing emotional release work, I wasn't thinking about cathedrals. I was just trying to feel better. But over time I began to feel tension melting in my face, in my sinuses, between my eyes, across my skull. It felt like opening windows in a very old building, like clearing the dust out of corners, like air moving through rooms that had been closed for years. If the skull is a cathedral, a holy land, then tending to it isn't religious. It's practical. It's clearing out stored emotion, stored tension. It's allowing breath to move freely again. It's creating space where there was tension and pressure. And when there's more space, like the space in a cathedral, perception changes, sound changes, vision changes, awareness deepens and can move inside. For centuries, we've built cathedrals out of stone, but maybe we've been living inside one all along. The question isn't whether we should visit a cathedral. We should, because they're beautiful buildings. The question is, how do we enter our own? And that's what I teach on this channel. Please give this video a thumbs up so that the algorithm shows it to other people like you. Click the notification bell if you want to be notified when I post another video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. That helps the algorithm expand the reach of the video. Thank you.